Hey everybody, welcome back to Paranormal Musings Podcast. We got a special guest today, David Sloan. Was gracious enough to come on and have a little chat with us. So I hope you all like this. So I'm gonna do a quick bio, and then we'll ask David some questions, and yeah, he can talk about what he does down in Key West. Some awesome stuff, as you can see up there on the corner, who he works with. So, David Sloan is an American author, publisher, artist, and producer based in Key West, Florida. Renowned for his books that capture the spirit, history, and mystery of the Florida Keys. This I didn't know, often hailed as the next Hemingway. That's pretty awesome. Nod to his adventurous lifestyle, has a flair for weaving together island history, paranormal tales, and his own brand of irreverent humor. Um, hope this is right. Launched his writing career in 1998. Founded Phantom Press, authored dozens of books that delve into the fascinating culture, cuisine, and haunted past of Key West. I actually own two of your books, paranormal books. Um, the second one I still have to read. I just got it recently, which is Robert the Doll. I can't wait to delve into that. Uh, his work spanning cookbooks, travel guides, ghost stories. Um, been featured in National Geographic. His writings introduced Vince Neil and Jack Osborne to Robert the Haunted Doll and taught Gordon Ramsay how to make key lime pie. And I think recently you had Sam and Colby.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I watched that episode. They met Robert. I don't think they met him recently, but the video came out recently. Um, so History Channel, Travel Channel, Discovery Plus, BBC, Food Network. Articles have appeared both locally and globally, gaining him recognition as one of the Keys' most celebrated storytellers. Um, David co-founded the Key Lime Festival and launched one of America's first ghost tours in Key West. And this is pretty awesome. Continues to raise money for local nonprofits through his tours and events. So that is pretty cool. You can find him volunteering at the Alex Vega Key West Firehouse Museum, which we'll get into that too. So, welcome to the show, David.
Thank you so much. It's great talking with you again. I'm really glad to be here.
Yes,
Right
we're
on.
glad to have you.
Oh yeah.
Adam couldn't. So we have another member here. Adam, he couldn't be in today. Um, he had something going on. So,
I
but
am wherever you are.
yeah, he's up in New Jersey. He's my brother-in-law. I used to do investigations with him when I lived up north. Um, so he's not happy that he can't be here, but life
He's
life
out getting
calls.
sun right now.
Yeah, yeah. He'd trust me. He'd rather be here.
I bet everybody up north right now would rather be down here.
Yeah.
He's here in
he lived
spirit.
down. He lived down here for almost a year and then moved back up and helps his father out. You know, years ago he had a stroke, so he's up there helping him out, and then we're trying to convince him to come down here, but his dad's stubborn, so
Yeah.
it's like come down here. It's a lot warmer. But yeah. So again, welcome to the show. We'll ask you some questions, and you can take over from there and talk as long as you want.
Great.
Um, we're free as long as you're free.
Great.
So my first question: how long have you actually lived in Key West? Were you born there, or
No, it's really interesting. I came here in 1996, and I really feel like I was led here. I was born in Pennsylvania.
okay?
I grew up in Texas, went to college in Miami, and even being in Miami, that was the first time I came to Key West. Was like 1988, and I was here for like 3 minutes and got arrested for underage drinking. and, and I never imagined that I'd live here or anything like that. And then, fate stepped in, and I ended up. Uh, I was managing cruise ships, and I quit my corporate job because, I mean, even the cruise ships were getting too corporate. So I quit and moved to Key West to start a ghost tour. I'd seen a ghost tour in Scotland, and I was like, wow, that's what I want to do.
Awesome.
So here I am, and it's kind of cool. I didn't know it before. I only found out about 5 years ago. The first David L. Sloan, who's my great-great-great-grandfather, his Civil War regiment, which was the Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers, they were in charge of Key West during the Civil War.
That's awesome.
That's amazing.
They built the fort where Robert the Doll lives.
Nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. You have your family. That's crazy. Connected history with Robert. That's crazy.
That's absolutely marvelous.
I didn't even know about it. And here's the weird thing. So, like, when I came to Key West, you come here now and it's known as one of the most haunted cities in America.
Mm-hmm.
But back then, it was the time when people weren't talking about ghosts a lot. If you talked about ghosts, people really thought you were insane and didn't want anything to do with you. So a lot of people held back on even discussing them. And I think there might have been 3 ghost tours in the United States. So I spent 2 weeks here sleeping on my friend's kitchen floor. And I'd been to the library looking for books on ghosts. There was nothing. I think I'd been to the library 2 or 3 times. And then I started going to the different bars, and I tipped the bartenders really well and asked them if that was the haunted bar or what the ghosts were there. And every place I went, they're like, no, nothing I know of. And I was getting ready to leave Key West because I couldn't find anything. And I got lost. And I'm flustered because I don't know what I'm going to do with my life. I mean, I'd quit my corporate job. It's like, great, what do I do now? And I get lost, leaving this small island. And then somebody appeared in the seat next to me in my car. And I heard their voice. And they said, go back to the library. And I remember I turned to them and I said, I don't know where that library is. And when I looked, nobody's there. All I saw was their sleeve. And it was like a tweed suit. And then I look up and there's a sign that says library parking only.
Oh, wow.
And there's an open spot right there. So I pull in, I go back in the library for the 3rd or 4th time, look through the card catalogs, nothing again. And then I go back to the Florida history room again. But this time there was a guy in there, an older guy. And he asked if he could help me with something. And I said, yeah, I'm looking for a book on ghosts of Key West. And he says, there are none. So I thank him and I turn around to leave. And he says, hang on, no books, but we've got ghosts. And
nice.
The library, you probably know this, the library in Key West, it has this big walk-in vault. And that protects all of our history from hurricanes and fires. It's like, it's a strong vault, but the public's not allowed to go back there. So Tom Hambright, he goes back into that vault and he comes out with a file several inches thick, full of newspaper clippings from the previous 30 years or so, all about the hauntings in Key West.
Wow.
And it changed my life. I started plotting them down. I called my friend. I said, hey, I'm going to sleep on your kitchen floor for a little bit longer. And I started knocking on doors. And this was a time in Key West when, now things are sold every couple of years, like the bed and breakfast and stuff. I was fortunate to hit owners who had been living in these places for 10 and 15 years. And that's what brought me to the Artist House. There was a news story talking about the ghost of Ann Otto haunting the Artist House. There was nothing about Robert.
Wow. I've heard that name. Yeah.
And Ann's amazing on so many levels. But when I knocked on the door at the Artist House, and the owner was Daryl Meyer, really incredible guy. I told him, I said, hey, I'm starting something called a ghost tour, and I was wondering if I could talk to you about your ghosts. And he said, oh, you want to hear about Robert? And I said, no, I want to hear about Anne. He said, no, 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 you want to hear about Robert. And then he starts talking about this doll that does all these strange things. And, back then, Robert was referred to as an enchanted doll.
Mhm.
He had taken blame for things. He, tied to the boy. Not much else was known about him. Nobody knew where the doll was made. There were theories about it. People thought that it might have voodoo involved. Some people thought an angry nanny had made the
Yeah.
doll for this kid, but there was nothing really solid except for what had been passed down from with word of mouth. And I thought Daryl was crazy talking about the doll. He asked me if I wanted to go to the attic room where the doll used to live. And as soon as he invited me, the phone flew off the hook. The cord
Wow.
stretches out, it snaps back. Daryl and I weren't standing, anywhere where we'd have something to do with that.
Yep.
I look over at it and he says, yeah, he's ready for you.
Yo.
Now, you gotta understand, I'd always believed in ghosts. I had a kindergarten teacher who used to talk about the spirits in her house, and that had gotten me interested in ghosts. And my family had a haunted hotel in Germantown, Pennsylvania. It was a great grandfather who haunted that. So I believed in them, but I wouldn't say I had experienced tons of paranormal activity. I had things happen for sure. But when that phone flew off the hook, it was so unexpected. And the way that Daryl took it so calmly. And so he says, let's go upstairs. And he starts walking up the stairs. There was a bookcase right up against the staircase, the door to it opened up to block me from passing it. And so I looked at Daryl again, and he says, just close it. He said, they're just messing with you. And then we go up to the second floor, and then at the back of the house, and you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, there's two different rooms that Robert spent a lot of his time in. One of them is the turret room at the front of the house. You can see that from the street. And that's when he spent time with Gene Otto that he was there. But when Gene wasn't there, during the years he wasn't there, Robert was kept in the attic at the back of the house. And that's the area that Gene really made as Robert's room. So narrow staircase going up. We get up into the attic. It's this hatch door that opens up into it. And it wasn't like he built the room separate. That portion of the house had some separate eaves going up. So the attic's kind of split into two. And it might be like 10 by 12 or something in this room. We get in there and it looked like a little kid's tea party been taking place. The furniture I remember, there was like a little rocking chair, there was a double bench, and there was like a small table in front that had some stuff on it. And there might have been some other furniture I don't remember really well, but I remember looking at it, and it was strange. And the attic was hot, like an attic would be.
Yep.
And then the energy changed. And there was a heat energy, but different than attic hot. And I felt something inside. I thought I was going to throw up if I didn't get out of there. And, I just met Daryl 5 minutes before. So I didn't really want to be throwing up in his attic.
That'd be bad.
It was also strange to me. So I kind of told him, I said, thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And I've got to go. So we start going down the stairs, and I started feeling better the further down the stairs we got. And I asked him, I said, where is this doll now? And Daryl says, oh, he's over at Fort East Martello Museum, or it's just East Martello Tower is what they called it then. And he told me, he said, it's a museum, but Robert's not on display. You, if you want to see him, you can try calling up, and maybe they'll bring him out for you. So I called, and the person who answered said, yeah, he's here. Why don't you call back when somebody else is working? I can't help you.
Oh man.
Then I called a couple days later, and the person I got then said, oh, why don't you call when this person's working? Because I can't help you. I said, they told me to call when you were working. Eventually, they had.
Oh, I think you're muted. I think your mute button hit, Dave.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why that is. Yeah, it says you're muted on your end, I think.
No, I still can't hear him.
What just happened? I can't unmute it from my side. It's saying your mic is not connected.
Have you got me now?
Got you
Yeah.
now. There we go.
I tell you this, being
You're
around.
you're talking about Robert, and look what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, I tell you, he likes to mess with things, and it seems like it's happening.
Oh yeah.
Before we started recording, I had it where my home pod came on, and it was a woman's voice that came through and said hello, and then it started playing music. But so the curator of the museum called me. Her name was Stacy Russo, and she said, I understand that that you'd like to see Robert, and so we made arrangements. I go up to the museum, and she goes into the back, like into where their offices were, and she comes out, and she's cradling Robert. She had him on his chair. She was cradling him like you would a child, and she was talking to him. And she said, Robert, this is David. He's starting something called a ghost tour, and he wants to take some photographs of you. And I thought, this island's full of crazy people. First, there's the guy talking about a doll with a spirit, and then there's the curator talking to this doll when she brings him out. And she set him on the table and left me alone. And the Fort East Martello, it's an old Civil War fort built around 1862. It felt like a creepy place. It didn't have climate control or great lighting. It felt like an old fort. And she leaves the doll on the table and leaves me alone. And looking at the doll, I can see how people would think that it looked strange. It's the size of a small child. It was dressed in a sailor suit. That wasn't his original outfit. He was originally dressed as a clown.
Yes.
And so here's the thing. I'm looking at the doll, and I can see why people would think things, but I did not feel a single thing from it. There was no sense of a presence. There was no sense that it was haunted. It was simply a doll with an interesting story. And I took several photographs. And this is back, it's pre-cell phone. So it was all with a film camera. And after I took several photos, I thought, oh, I want to get one of him without his hat. And so I reached over and I touched the brim of his hat and lifted it off of his head. And the second that I did that, boom, the doll came alive. Now, when people say they see Robert moving and stuff like that, yes, that's happened. But most of the time, what I believe is happening when people see Robert move, I think it's a spirit entering the doll from somewhere else. And I don't know the reasons why, but it's almost like when that spirit collides with the tangible doll, you get that flash second of movement.
Yeah. Yep.
But the doll changed. To me, the look on his face changed. The look in his eyes changed. I was no longer alone in the room. There was definitely the presence. And in my mind, I go, oh, I've got to get a photo of this. I'll be able to show the difference between how he looked and how he looks now. And so I go to take the photo and the camera will not snap the photo.
Wow.
I try a second time. The camera will not take the photo. Third time's the charm? No. So I'm with the camera, I'm like, what's going on with it? And I kind of turn it around to look and see if there's anything weird on the front. And it took 3 pictures of me, like, right of my face.
Wow.
I turn it to take the picture of the doll. It won't work again. And I heard like giggling. And then that energy just left the doll completely. And it became that inanimate object again. And I was just looking at it, and you think about what happened, and I'm like, I've got to figure out what's inside this doll, what's making it tick. And that kind of set me on this journey that's gone on 30 years now. And the incredible thing, anytime that I think I have everything figured out, I get thrown like another curveball, or I get not even like I get thrown a curveball. It's almost like I'm given another piece of the puzzle that unravels another layer of Robert. And if you had told me 30 years ago that I'd still be trying to figure it out today, or that there'd still be more being revealed, I'd say absolutely not. But it's just this incredible journey now.
Yeah, wow. When I heard you when you said he was in a clown outfit before.
Yeah.
So I had heard, were there several dolls made when he was actually made?
He's very rare. So
Okay.
so I really started like digging into dolls, and there were different theories about what might be in him, what's causing the hauntings. And I just started digging so much into dolls. There were no marks on him. The museum, the first thing that happened is I started telling the story that we knew, the story from the legends. I started telling that on my ghost tour, which didn't go to the museum because the museum's on the other side of Key West.
Yeah.
So we'd stop in front of the artist house and I'd tell that story. And we'd have the most interesting activity up in the turret room where Robert used to sit. We'd have a shade that would get pulled back. People would see Robert's face appear in that window. And the activity was unbelievable. Every night I'd tell people, you gotta call the museum and ask them to bring Robert out. When you see him in person, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Enough people started doing that. And so the museum, it's like a museum of Key West history where it has a lot of industry stuff like about spongers and turtling, and it's got some really interesting artifacts, but it wasn't a museum that anybody really went to. They might have had a couple people a day going up there. So when people started going up to see Robert, they said, well, a lot of people are asking to see him now. Maybe we should put him on display. And they put him in this display case. It wasn't his original. It's not the one he's in now. He shared it with other Key West characters. And there was like an effigy of the Cookie Lady, who's famous in Key West for the cookies she sold at Mallory Square. There was the Iguana Man. And then they put a little chair, and you had Robert the doll. He was, the case, he was down on floor level, just elevated a little bit. It wasn't even a locked case. So you'd be able to slide it open if you wanted, and you could have actually touched Robert back then. They put him on display, and people started having problems. The problems that they had back then, it was batteries draining. And in 96, the batteries people had were in their phones or in their pacemakers.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
that's dangerous.
Yeah. They started telling people, they'd say, hey, do you have a pacemaker? You might want to steer clear of the doll.
Yeah.
Robert started draining batteries in cameras. But then the interesting thing, he messed with the film too, where people would take these photographs, and when they got them developed, back then you didn't take hundreds of pictures on vacation. You took a roll of 12 pictures or 24 pictures. You'd go home, get them developed, and see what you got. Their pictures would come back with only the photos of Robert turning out.
Wow.
And then, there was a guy, Scott Ruse, I think was his name. He owned the photo developing place here where most people went. And he started asking people if they had been to see Robert, because his machine, is automated to a degree. If there were photographs of Robert, it would keep printing until it ran out of paper. Or so he'd end up with hundreds of pictures of Robert the doll. And so now, one of the big legends, there's some horrible legends about Robert that just won't die. And the worst one for me is that you have to ask Robert permission to take his photograph.
Yeah.
That's where this stemmed from, because Robert messed with cameras. But it's a human legend, because humans said, oh, be careful, he messes with cameras. And then it would be, oh, maybe he doesn't like his picture being taken. Maybe we better ask his permission. And you guys know as well as anybody, it can be dangerous to ask an entity for permission.
Yeah.
And
letting them in.
And I hate this legend because, when they had other tours going up there, the trolleys used to go up there for a while. They don't go there anymore. But at some point when Robert got his big case, they wrote on his wall, don't forget to ask permission from Robert before you take a photograph. And so that it's dangerous, but it's also kind of stupid, because first off, how's Robert going to say yes or no?
That was actually one of my questions.
I took a picture when I was there at the fort, and I posted it. And I don't know how many people, oh my God, you better ask permission. I can't believe. And I'm like, all right, let me shut him up. Yeah, sure. I asked permission. I was like, I was very respectful to Robert, and people were freaking out. And then there's like, oh, I wouldn't have posted that. And I was like, hey guys, if you go online, you see pictures of Robert. Did anything happen to you? I was like, relax.
And it's very interesting, because that's the legend that I hate now. People think that Robert will curse you from looking at his photograph online. And I think some of these things can be self-fulfilling prophecies, Do I think Robert can curse people through their computer? I don't think it's likely. Now, with some of these videos, so many people think that maybe they're building this collective, and they're opening up the opportunity for something else to get in. I think that's a possibility. So, but with the photos, so Robert's not going to say, yeah, you can take a picture. No. And so first, that's ridiculous. And then you have people who say, I didn't ask permission and nothing happened to me. And to that, I say, of course it didn't, because you were probably respectful. But then what about people who don't ask permission?
Challenge.
Say that they're cursed.
It's disrespect.
I find it all stems to respect. Respect all, and you don't have an issue. Disrespect it, you can have issues.
Exactly. Yeah, I've heard of people challenging or whatever. It's like, why would you do that? That's disrespectful. You get what you get.
And what I ended up finding, I uncovered a treasure trove of information about the Otto family. Gene and Ann Otto are the ones who had the doll. And Anne was a librarian. So she had stored away in the back of the library all of their family archives, letters that she and Jean sent to family members, photographs of the family through the years. Just a lot of interesting information and a lot of stuff from Jean's sister Mitzvah, who was a family historian. She documented a lot of the family's early history. Nobody knew that this stuff was in the library except for one historian, Sharon Wells. And she had been closely involved with the artist house and had done some stuff. So I saw a photograph she had of Jean and Anne's wedding. And I said, "Where did you get that?" And she goes, "Oh, it's in the box at the library." I said, "What box is this?" I mean, I'd been in the library, like, by that time I'd been in probably 30, 40 times talking with Tom Hambright, the historian. And he had never mentioned that box. But I think everything's revealed when it should be. So I get that box and I start reverse engineering the legends. I found a nanny or a servant who worked with the Ottos, and I identified her as Emmeline Abbott. I found a lawsuit that she filed against the family in, I think, 1924, which makes her the angry nanny.
Wow.
I dig deeper and I find census records. I look at the census records for her, and I see in 1900 she has no children. In 1910, she has no children living, one child dead. So she lost a child about the time that Robert the doll had arrived. And I think that was the little black girl that people see crying on the steps at the artist house. I think I think she's a primary spirit within the doll. And we don't know her name. Okay? All we know is that there was a child who passed. And based on different psychics who have been there, different people and what they report in the house, the different encounters with a little girl, it's become such a common thread. We think she's probably about 5 years old. She's supposed to have been very close to Jean Otto, who had the doll. And what I believe happened, so Jean came from a family of doctors. His dad was a doctor. His grandfather was a doctor. I believe when the nanny's child became ill or was injured, she took it to her employer. She went to the doctor, and the child died. And then when Cindy Kaza, I keep forgetting how she pronounces that.
I know that name.
Yeah, she was down here with when they did the Robert the Doll shock doc, and I tell you, she's good. She's and she picked up on stuff that nobody could even try to prepare to visit Robert and know the details that she knew about a lot of things. And she picked up that she picked up on the nanny, she picked up on the child dying, and she said that when the child died, she wanted retribution. She wanted the family to feel the pain that she did. So she sought out a voodoo practitioner in town. And that manifested the curse that did something to the doll, and probably put the child in there too.
The child spirit in there.
Yeah. And so what I think happens when people are up there at the fort, the other thing Cindy talked about was a portal. I had identified multiple entities at one point. That was my first problem, was thinking that Robert was one entity. And then when bad things started happening to me when I identified it as a child, I didn't understand. And then, multiple entities, and some of them don't want the child's story out there.
Yeah.
So what seems to happen is these spirits work together, where when you go to the museum, if you disrespect the doll, you're really disrespecting the little girl. So if you go and flip her off or challenge her, it's hurting her feelings. And the way it was described by my friend Haley Castellano, who worked with Robert for a long time, she's a conch, she really understands Robert. She said it's like that little girl will tag whoever's being disrespectful with like some sticky tar. And then the different spirits will come out of that portal and latch onto that person.
Oh, wow.
And they'll go with them and follow them home. They'll start infiltrating their thoughts. They'll cause all of the misfortunes, you know. And it goes beyond lost baggage, because that can happen to anyone. But, you know, lost baggage and delayed flights, that's just like the tip of it. You have people who have horrible accidents, or find dead deer in their yard, or get locked in their basement and hear giggling. There can be some pretty intense stuff. And I never understood. I always thought, well, how could Robert be cursing so many people at the same time? And when you think about a portal with multiple entities, that really does make sense of it. Because, you disrespect the girl, and it's like she has, a bunch of big brothers who say, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take care of you." And the only way to release those spirits back to wherever it is they came from is to apologize to Robert. And he's well over 10,000 letters from people asking, and he gets some really nice letters too. Kids love Robert the doll, especially children with autism. When they show up, and you can tell them, "Hey, we're going to go see an evil doll. We're going to go see," they'll walk in and they'll be like, "Robert's not evil. Robert's not bad." And they'll say that they love Robert. And a lot of times they'll draw pictures of him and send him birthday cards. They'll write him letters and say, "I love you, Robert." And I think those kids are seeing that spirit, because, you know, if you are to go to the source documents, the stuff that was out there in 1996, because there were a couple of articles, and then there was one book. It was by Arthur Meyer, and the name of it slips my mind right now, but it was a ghost hunting book, and there was a chapter on Robert in there, and he talked to the people who were around then, and they all talked about the voodoo and things, but Robert was really the enchanted doll. And through the decades, people have made him evil.
Yeah.
Right? And, there's something strange about a haunted doll for sure. But Robert was never really evil. Robert was mischievous. There was that enchantment. And then if you crossed Robert or got on his wrong side, with that disrespect, you'd certainly suffer the wrath of Robert. But now people, I think what happens is, when people have their YouTube channel and they know, they see that they're getting a lot of subscribers when they talk about the demon, when they talk about this things coming up from hell, and of course, I think everybody in the paranormal, I mean, it's kind of a dream if you can make a living off of the paranormal, right? I mean, when I learned that I tell ghost stories, and I was like, great. But I've always tried to maintain the integrity of, if it's a legend, say it's a legend. So I always try to do that. I'm not perfect by any means, but so I think with that hype, it's really changed the story of Robert the doll. And like any legend, it's going to evolve with the retelling. And when you have a doll that's 120 years old, of course, there's going to be a lot of that going on. But it really does concern me there's so many young adults and so many children who are learning about the paranormal from videos about it on YouTube.
We're on the same page.
It's really important that there are voices out there telling them that not everything's a demon.
Exactly.
And telling them that, the lesson that I'm learning right now is, there's darkness and there's light, and then there's the in between. And I think in between is where the magic is. We label things as good and bad, or good and evil. I don't think things are necessarily either. I think they are. And finding that balance is not an easy thing to do. I think you have to experience both sides of it. But
like being in the gray.
Yeah, in the gray. Yeah. And I think if kids or young adults or anybody really into the paranormal, if they go on an inward journey instead of looking outward, I think that's where they'll find answers.
Always.
Yeah, it's especially on YouTube, it runs rampant. Like the clickbaits and all that. Is it a demon? And I know some of these teams you're talking about. I know of them. I don't know them personally, but it's you start watching them, and I'm like, I can't even watch them anymore because it's ridiculous. But
I don't.
They know how to grab you.
Yeah, I don't fault them for doing what they're doing.
You got to make a living.
And when I kind of think, there's paranormal, and then there's paranormal entertainment.
Yeah.
And I think we like to think that everybody would know the difference. But we all have such different upbringings, and you never know where someone's coming from. And I think all those types of videos have their place too. They take people on these journeys. They bring them into the forest where they're facing the different these different fears. And by facing our fears, we do become stronger, and it builds character. So I think there probably is a place for them, but I do think it's important for people to understand the difference between spirits and spirituality and paranormal entertainment.
If they had put something on there like, "Hey, this is for entertainment," that'd be great. I know they won't, but I will say this: some of the places they go to, even though I know they're doing it for entertainment, I do like the fact that I get to learn about different places. Then I can go on my own and do you can do an actual investigation.
Yeah.
I think that's great, but we're also a little bit older, and we know this. When I started, I had the ghost hunters, and they wanted the TV channel wanted them to do certain stuff, but Jason was like, "No, we're not doing that." We're some of the episodes were boring, but to me, it was fantastic. It wasn't boring at all because I was like, "That's what paranormal investigation is for real." So I'd rather see that, but kids today, they don't want to see that.
And the networks said, "Hey, that was okay, but if you want season 2, let's start having some more twists out there." And then of course it's like, hey, if you're doing what you love and you don't want to go back to doing something you don't love, then a lot of people are faced with that choice. And I think there's definitely room for all of it. I mean, I love paranormal entertainment. It's great. But being able to see it as that,
yes,
I think is.
You find some gems in there every once in a while. Cordell, he'll tell you, I always bring their name up. I don't know if you've heard of Paranormal Quest.
Not familiar.
So there's 2 guys. So I watch debunkers too. Debunkers love them because they debunk themselves while they're there. Whenever they use a device, they always say, "Hey," they're not saying we're going to catch something on this. It's an experiment. Like, we're going to experiment with this and see what we get. And when they get something, they look at it, they analyze it. It's still entertaining as far as they're using the gadgets. So you're hearing this, you're hearing that, but they won't say that. Yes, that is paranormal. They let you know that up front. And they'll actually send their unedited footage to debunkers to look at in case they miss something. And I'm like, I respect that. They got a good following, not as much as the major entertainment ones, but they got a good following and they're respected, on the channel throughout the paranormal world. there, if you want something that's entertaining but not for, I guess it's still for entertainment, but it's not, it's not those guys. Paranormal Quest is a good one.
Great.
They look like the other guys, but they're not. They're pretty good. I like them. So I always put their name out there because
That's great. Yeah, that's one that I want to check out.
Yeah.
It's interesting because I like it because I think with paranormal, I think it's a chance for us to really look at ourselves because everybody wants to know, is there something
yes
after us?
Yes,
And
exactly.
And the interesting thing with ghosts and spirits, science hasn't caught up to where we can prove them, but we've known for a long time that we're pretty young in our scientific knowledge
Yep.
as a race right now,
Yeah.
and that'll catch up. And I think quantum physics will probably explain a lot, and will probably make sense of everything as far as different religions and ghosts, and I think we'll see something coming from that soon. But
Yeah.
what I like, I think it's all about us tapping in to something deeper than ourselves, and if the different tools help us do that, I see people who argue about orbs and whether they're real or not, and
Yeah.
people who like to debunk. I always think things happen to people for a reason, and we never know what path someone's been on. And who's to say a ghost cannot manipulate something to create an orb that will talk to that person individually? I mean, yeah, can you create an orb with dust or with pollen? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Does it mean that they're not ghosts? I don't think so. So I think whenever it gets to whether ghosts are real or ghosts are fake, and if you ever choose sides, I think it's very different for anybody. Um, and I think if you talk to a lot of people and ask them, hey, is there something else besides us? The answer is going to be, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think everybody on all sides are probably in it for the right reasons. I would say 99.99%.
Yeah.
We're all in it for the right reasons. And I think it's hard nowadays, but when people realize if they work together, we may, because it's like, hey, I like people to look at stuff and may find something I didn't even see, but they're all in their corners and they won't, come in the middle and work with each other. I think if they all worked with each other, it'd be better and we get some better evidence. We may find out stuff. And like I said, I think we got to get the science. We got to get the science in there. The scientists, all that stuff. I think we need better gear too.
Yeah.
Break stuff all the time.
I think everything's going to break down. I think when you go down to the atomic structures of things, when you start getting down to the small particles and the science, I think that's going to really provide a lot of answers, because I believe that we have the ability to manipulate the atoms that are around us to do different things, and I think that could be where some of the energy comes from. With ghosts, I rarely call myself a paranormal investigator. I like researching history. That's really what I love. I love reverse engineering stories or legends and finding things out. I love reading old newspapers. I love going through the different ancestry sites. So I like that as far as research, but I've never really cared about capturing evidence of a ghost to show someone else, hey, look what I found, and here's the proof. I love that there are people who do it, but I've always considered myself a ghost hunter, where it's like, I want to go out there and experience them. I want to go to a place and I want to put out the energy where they want to interact with me, and I want to have something happen where it's like, whoa, and then I want to take people out. I want to try to get them to come out and experience the same thing. And I think that's so much fun. But I think I've got that short attention span where if I'm somewhere for a few hours, I don't think I could ever bear having to go through all of the recordings. And I've got such
Yes.
great respect for the people who do
Yeah,
that.
it's hard.
It's
It's hard when you got 5 hours of footage on 3 different devices.
yeah,
That it sucks.
yeah. I mean, and it's really a full-time job, and it's incredible.
Yeah,
I really take my hat off to you for doing that.
yeah,
And
it's
when we were talking about the last investigation that you did, I
mhm.
love it. I love how methodical you are, and I learn things from talking to you about how you're conducting them because I'm still down here in Key West, and I'm not always tuned into what's happening. I don't watch any of the shows, and so I love hearing everything from you about the different
Yeah,
techniques, and I think it's great that the things that you're innovating too.
yeah. It's all about like for me, it's like I want to know. I want to know. I want to learn and get in there. I love going to places. If I don't catch anything, I don't care. Just like you
Yeah.
said, the experience.
Yeah,
Just the journey
You're gonna get
itself.
yeah, yeah. You're gonna get stuff happening to you that you're not gonna get on a recording. You're not gonna get it on your camera. So what? So what?
Yeah.
That experience alone is
Yeah.
awesome. And the thing that sucks about it is you got to go through all that footage that you just took to see if you got anything, and then you're like, there's nothing there. Cool, but I got a great story.
yeah. Well, I'll when things happen out at 40 Martello, because there's so many more spirits there than just Robert the Doll. We say 42, but the number
Mhm.
it seems to be much higher. But I also think spirits will go wherever there's energy. So I think they might pretend to be whatever spirit you're talking about. So, but we'll take, something will happen and I'll take video of someone explaining what just happened to them, and I always think, oh, I'll post that at some point. And I've got thousands of videos like that I haven't even had the chance to go through. So we had the 5-hour investigations. Whew, yeah, you guys are
Oof.
good. You
Yeah.
guys are good.
Yeah.
It's such dedication. But I like that.
Speaking of that, go ahead.
No.
Speaking of the fort, the dollhouse.
Yeah.
I was able to spend about, I think we were in there for like 15, 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't catch anything on any devices, but the feeling in there was weird. I don't know if it's because of the size of the place, but I don't think it was that. It just felt weird in there. Like somebody was in there looking at us, like just watching what we're doing.
It's really interesting because that
Yeah.
dollhouse, and people watching this, you think dollhouse, you think something small. This is a dollhouse that you can actually go in. It's like it's like a small house, right? Like
Small house, yeah.
Tiny house. But yeah, you can't stand up completely without hitting your head, but you can lean down. It's got doors from the front and back. You can go in and out. A couple of windows on each side, and then there's some little cases. And in those cases, there's probably a dozen or more antique dolls. And this dollhouse, it came to the fort in the 1950s. And people don't just experience one spirit. They talk about dozens of children's spirits around this dollhouse. And it's interesting because we don't know of any children who died at the fort. But what I've always found, when you have adult spirits, they don't want to be around anybody. They're usually very solitary.
Yeah.
But when you have children's spirits, it's almost like there's safety in numbers. And if you get one child, you'll get dozens. And with this dollhouse, it would have been very special. It would have been a great little playhouse. It was owned by 2 different Ednas had it. The last one was Edna Walkowski, but I think it was she was Edna Gatto maybe, but Gatto is one of the big cigar manufacturers. So this would have been a rich kid's playhouse. And apparently all the kids in the neighborhood used to want to come and play in that house.
Oh yeah.
And so when the Wachowskis moved, it was given to another family, and that family gave it to someone else. And then it was donated to the museum in the 50s because the first curator, when they turned it from a fort to a museum, she was Key West's biggest doll collector.
Oh wow.
And this is before Robert was even there. So they craned this dollhouse in. And there's been all that spirit activity. So we think because it was such, it was like the clubhouse for the neighborhood. And I think because there was so much attachment, there was probably at least one wild spirit that ended up there. And then these other
residual energy.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the residual. And then it seems like there's intelligent too. So when, like we've been in there, and people will get the children, and we've used spirit boxes, and you get kids' voices coming through. But then you'll get one angry voice. Like shortly after the kids are there, there's someone who's almost a protector, and they'll yell at people to get out or to leave. And sometimes we'll get the smell of cigar smoke when that's happening. So we think it might be Gato coming back. But another possibility with those dolls in there, and they've got one of the Raggedy Anns that looks like Annabelle, a smaller one.
Yeah.
There's some, I think there's some Native American dolls. There's some they're creepy. I found a newspaper article about it was America's first female bank president. And she was in Key West in the 1950s or 60s. And she was touring the museum and saw the dollhouse. And she told them, she said, I'm a huge doll collector. I've got an incredible collection of dolls. When I die, I want my dolls to go here.
That's awesome.
Or maybe she's even said she was going to donate them before she died. I don't have those records, but we have that article, and I think that might be the source of where those dolls in there came from. So again, it's from somebody who put a lot of intention into them, and so there's a lot of possibilities of what's causing that energy. But there's so much there.
Yeah, that place was cool.
Yeah.
I think that's the first thing I went into when I was there, and I was like, "This is creepy but awesome." It's like feels like somebody's looking at it.
Yeah,
Cordell, you got to go there.
Yep.
The dollhouse is incredible. A lot of people, like we do the general admission tour, which people get the 30-minute tour, 30-minute ghost tour of the fort, some of the more haunted places. 30-minute Robert the Doll experience, and that's where we have the chairs, everybody's seated in Robert's room, and you get to hear his true history, his true origins, and then theories on what's haunting him. After that, people who do VIP get the full hour, where
that's what I did.
We've got the spirit boxes, we've got dowsing rods, EMF meters, and a lot of different things, paranormal challenges. But people love going to the Yellow Fever Hospital.
Yes, I went in there too.
What did
so I think it was the second floor, maybe. There's some art pieces up there that I was like, "Well, what's that?" And I was like, "Okay, it's art pieces." But it felt like me and my buddy were in there, and it felt like somebody walked between us. It got really, really cold, and I was like, "Do you feel that?" He goes, "Yeah, that was kind of weird." We had some questions in there. We didn't get anything, but we had that one experience, and it felt like they walked right between us, like on purpose. And it's just like we're looking at each other, like it's like you felt that, right? And somebody just went between us. It got really cold, and then back to normal. That's a really cool building, and the history on that was pretty sweet.
Yeah, and they never even finished building the fort. It's still a pretty good sized fort, but for people who haven't been there, there's this entire central tower, 3 stories. You can go all the way up to the top, and it's a cool view. But that was going to be main defense. After people tried to, if they were to breach the outside walls, the citadel would have been where they'd make the last stand. And this fort, the way it was designed, it was pretty much impenetrable. But then when they were building the outer areas, yellow fever was killing so many people in Key West during the Civil War. It would flare up in the summer. People didn't want to be here. And the thing with yellow fever, they didn't know that mosquitoes were spreading it. So people are getting sick with this mystery illness. And, you start turning, it would jaundice your skin as it was eating your liver. So that's where you get the yellow part. You think you were so sick you were going to die with fever, and then you get better for like a day. And then it would start eating the rest of your organs, and you hit this black vomit phase where you're actually throwing up all of your organs. So horrible, horrible way to die. You see all these people dying, and you're like, I don't know what's causing that, but I don't want that. So get them away. Get them the hell away from me. So the fort was far enough away. I mean, it was about as far as you could go in Key West without leaving the island. And they'd finished building the interior. So they made the second floor of that a yellow fever hospital.
Wow, that's crazy.
We don't know how many people died there. It's really interesting because with yellow fever, they had the main hospitals. Something makes me think that this might have been a yellow fever hospital for the enslaved people in Key West. A lot of the enslaved people were building the forts. Back when there were salt ponds beside where the fort is, they had barracks right there for the enslaved people. And I think there was a degree of segregation that they had with the fort. Now, some people will tell you, if somebody had yellow fever, they went home. A lot of these people didn't have homes here. You got to realize the number of people in Key West. We were a Union town, 100% during the Civil War, Union occupied. You had the Pennsylvania 47th Volunteers, which was one that the first David Sloan was in. And then you had the New York 90th Volunteers. But you had a few thousand people, and the population of Key West was less than that prior.
Wow.
So you got to realize the massive number of people who were here temporarily. And they were out in the dry tortugas at Fort Jefferson. That's got some spirit.
Yeah, I never made it out there.
Oh, you'll have to come down again. And
Terry,
next time you're here too, I don't know when it's going to open, but the old jail here, that's being turned into a museum. The jail goes back to the 1890s. And there have been hangings there. I think there were 5 sanctioned hangings. And there's this tree that grows out front. Terry, you've probably seen it right in front of the courthouse, the big kapok tree. The kapok, in a lot of cultures, it's like the tree of life because its branches go down to the underworld. And the roots go to the underworld.
The roots,
the heavens. And they say that tree absorbs some of the souls who have died on those grounds. And if you look at it at different times, now you can see faces in anything if you look hard enough, but you'll see some handprints or faces on this thing that are pretty convincing. And then you can go a few days later and look at the same spot and they're gone and they appear somewhere else. But I think this tree, it's old. We don't know exactly how old. When the courthouse was there, the kapok tree is used a lot in Santeria. And Santeria is used a lot to have favorable outcomes in the courts. So I think that tree was planted there specifically for rituals.
That's insane.
In court.
Wow.
Yeah. That's
awesome.
I was just reading. I'm exploring these fascinating aspects of Robert, and they tie into some of the German folklore. But there are these creatures that people, or protectors that people used to make, and they'd grow them in the soil of a hanged man's fluids, because they say when people are hanged, they
release.
Yeah, you void your bowels.
Yeah. So
you release.
so they say there's these certain, they're dolls made from roots, and they say that when they're made from that ground, that they take on these characteristics. It's there's a lot of interesting stuff.
Wow.
A lot of this tree stuff, a lot of still stuff I'm piecing together.
Yeah, Key West is for those who are going to watch this, if you haven't been down there, you're into the paranormal, you should go. There's a lot of history down there.
Yeah.
Bars, everything. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff down there.
And so many of people are never really at rest here. The earliest cemetery was out along the beach. First you had the Native American bones from the Calusa. When they discovered Key West, they named it Cayo Hueso, which means island of bones, because the whole place was scattered with bones and burial mounds. Then you had Commodore Porter, who his team came down here to get rid of the pirates in the surrounding waters. They buried all of them right along, like from the southernmost point over to the Martello Towers, all along the dunes there were our first burials. The hurricane of, I think, 42 or 46, 1846 maybe, it pushed all the dead people in their caskets out of the dunes and washed them across the island.
Oh, I remember that.
And you read these early reports, and God, I mean, Cordell, it's unbelievable, the descriptions of dead people everywhere. So the island is really washed with the dead. And then you've got, where the West Martello Tower is, there were, I think, 3 ships where everybody on them was going to be sold into slavery. And then slavery was abolished, so they became refugees. The ships were captured, brought to Key West. Hundreds of people died because the conditions were so atrocious. They couldn't recover.
The absolute stench.
Yeah, they buried them in a mass grave. And then when the Civil War came and they wanted to build the West Martello Museum, they said, well, dig the bodies up and move them. So nobody ever rests here. The dead never.
They're always being bothered.
The city that never sleeps, for real.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man,
that's wild.
That is.
Yeah, they say that Key West might also be so active. You notice the old port towns have a lot of spirit activity. New Orleans, Charleston, St. Augustine, Savannah. So there's something about port towns, and you're both familiar with theories about water. How water can charge spirits. A lot of times you find spirits in bathrooms because that's where the water is being flushed, creating that energy. But then salt spirits. There's theories that the salt water charges them and traps them. So
it's where you get those old pirates' tales about
salt water. I've heard a theory about salt water, at least charging. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah, and then there's the limestone theories too.
Yes, yeah, I've heard of those.
Up north, people started having it happen, like farmhouses that had limestone foundations. And the cool thing about Key West, we're an old coral reef. Ancient reef where we were underwater at one point, and then as the water levels went down, the coral reef started eroding, and that's what all the Florida Keys are. We're or coralline limestone.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting. I don't know which of these factors is really responsible for all the hauntings, or maybe it's a combination of them. But there's no denying it's a special place.
Yeah. Well, we're about 10 minutes over an hour. So I'm going to get final words.
Goodbye. Yeah, this has been so much fun. I'm really glad.
Oh yeah, this has been awesome. I mean,
Definitely.
if you're up to it, we'd like to have you back on at some point if you're up to it, because like you said, there's a lot in Key West.
Yeah.
And you're good with the history there, and I'd like to discuss some more stuff down there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got a lot of respect for what you guys do, and I appreciate you helping me out with the case. When for people who are watching, there was someone who was very concerned about some spirit activity they were having. I mean, they were desperate for help, and
Yes.
they were further up in Florida. So I put something out on one of the Facebook groups, and Terry was the only person who answered. And he said, fill me in what's going on. I'll help. And then you guys traveled a good distance to go help this person, and ended up really helping them. So
yeah, she actually has been helped.
Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for you guys for doing that. So anytime,
Oh yeah,
anytime,
no worries.
I'll do anything.
Yeah, we love it.
All about it.
Yeah, that was. I think that's the best part of it, is she actually got some help, the right help.
We were able to get her answers and get her a conclusion.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about.
Yep. Yes, sir.
It was an interesting case.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yes. A word. Yes.
That's an entire episode in itself, right?
Oh yeah, that was an interesting case, but yeah, she got the help she definitely needed. Very bizarre.
Yeah.
But I think the main concerns we had are gone. So
yes,
and she feels a lot better. She feels a lot better. So.
Yeah.
But okay, any last words, David, before we stop this? And like I said, we'd love to have you back on again. So we'll talk about that.
Yeah, and if anybody's coming to Key West, I'm on Instagram, David L. Sloan. I've got like the website for my tours at the fort, but where I suggest people go is hauntedkeywest.com. I did an entire free haunted directory on Key West. So it lists my tour, it lists other people's tours, it lists haunted bars, restaurants, hotels.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if you're into ghosts, you're coming to Key West, go there, and that will really help you out with things. And then you can hook up with me through Instagram.
Awesome. Yeah, next time we chat on here, I definitely want to talk about the bars. I know some of them down there. Talk about those haunted bars and the haunted tour. Talk about what goes on there, because I think there's a foot one and a trolley one, right?
Yeah. I think there's a dozen ghost tours down here.
Yeah, it's
you've got some of the national chains. The ones that I promote on Haunted Key West are all local, because we've got some really local characters. Whiskey does some great tours. Amy Andrade. There's the original Key West Ghost Hunt, which is my old company, but my friend Ted owns that now. There's just a lot of really good local ones, and they're all different. So
support local businesses.
Yeah, you got to support the local businesses, and
yeah.
Well, awesome. All right, so we'll wrap it up here, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. I definitely enjoyed it.
I really did.
So everybody watches this.
Bye.
Yeah. I hope everybody you watch this, you enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. I actually have another interview this Sunday with a paranormal team from New Hampshire. So that should be cool. But yeah, we'll see everybody next time. And Cordell, take us out.
Stay spooky, my friends.
Stay spooky. Happy hunting, everybody.
That's great.